Good evening to all of you. Um, Today, our webinar is on ancient water heritage of Sri Lanka. And being citizens of a country with a rich hydraulic civilization, today we are going to broaden our horizons on that subject. And today, our media partner is NetFM, and the live streaming will be done by the Institution of Engineers Sri Lanka, which will be the host of this event. So without further ado, I'm going to invite Engineer Professor Mrs. Niranjani Ratnayaka, President of the Institution of Environmental Professionals of Sri Lanka, and also the past President of IESL, and Emeritus Professor of the Department of Civil Engineering, University of Moratuwa. Over to you, Madam.
Mr. Shantastri, Head International Division of National Science Foundation. Engineer Mrs. Bhadra Kamaladasa, Chairperson Water Forum, IESL, and former Director General of Irrigation Department. Our guest speaker today, Dr. P.B. Dharmasena, the moderator of the Q&A session, Professor Bandhuni Atapattu, member of Section C, GRC of SLAs, as well as IEPSL and IESL. Members of IESL, IEPSL, and SLAS, and guests. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We are gathering today remotely at a time when the world is facing an unprecedented calamity with disease, deaths, and economic collapse looming ahead for most of our countries. Sri Lanka is no exception, as statistics indicate that the third wave of the pandemic we are facing right now is posing a very real threat to us, if not managed responsibly by the authorities as well as us as individuals. We have been celebrating many international days in the past few weeks on biodiversity, sustainable engineering, oceans, environment, and so on. And every time we learn that human actions in the past few decades have really thrown the balance of nature out. And we are facing many catastrophes as well as slow degradation of the scarce resources we have on Earth. We cannot turn the clock back, but at least if we take time to stop and think about how our ancestors used the natural resources and nature-based solutions to the problems that faced mankind in their times, perhaps we can find a way forward to avoid the terrible future that may face us and our children and their children if we continue business as usual. We seem to have forgotten the way to live the good life that our ancestors have enjoyed in our pursuit of instant gratification of our desires and short-term benefits without looking at the long-term consequences. Now the time has come to look back into history, to learn from them, and we have with us Dr. Dharmasena to share with us the knowledge and experiences he has gathered over the years on one of Sri Lanka's world-renowned heritages, our water heritage. So on behalf of the Institute of Environmental Profession in Sri Lanka, let me warmly welcome all of you to this webinar on Ancient Water Heritage of Sri Lanka, organized jointly by the IESL Water Forum, SLA Section C, the National Science Foundation, and the IEPSL. IEPSL is a relatively young institute, and I feel it is my duty to say a few words about us, as I know there are some participants who are not members of our institute or may not even be aware of our existence. IEPSL is the umbrella organization of environmental professionals in the country and was established in 2006 through a cabinet decision. The institute was formed to fill the much needed gap of having no professional institute for the practicing environmentalists to work together to uphold the dignity and raise the reputation of the environmental profession in the country. We are a group of professionals of varying disciplines. We have biologists, physicists, chemists, engineers, architects, town planners, agriculturalists, technologists, accountants, lawyers, social scientists, and many other professionals working in the government as well as private sectors, while some of us are actually working freelance. The common thread among all of us being the commitment to the environmental conservation and sustainable development. The Institute is committed to extending professionalism and its services to the country at large for the benefit of the public. We are very excited because IEPSL was incorporated by an Act of Parliament, Act number 1 of 2020 in February last year. Thanks to the unwavering efforts of the past presidents, council members, officials of the Ministry of Environment and Central Environmental Authority, and other government authorities and well-wishers who made this happen. But mind you, we are not a government organization. We are an independent organization. We can have our own say and express our own view on matters. We have a membership of about 750, which includes about 80 chartered environmental professionals who have proven their competence and commitment towards environmental protection and sustainability while performing their duties in their own professions. All our members must abide by the code of ethics, which expects us to conduct our professional lives and activities in an ethical manner, exhibit the highest standards of honesty and integrity, be dedicated to the protection, conservation, and sound management of natural resources, and perform under a standard of professional behavior that conforms to the highest principles of ethical conduct. Please do visit our website, iepsl.lk, to learn more about IEPSL and what we do. And do become a member if you think you would like to work with us and make a positive contribution to our environment. I will stop there about talking about our institute. Please, you can talk to us, you can go to the website. And if you do feel that you fit in, you would like to work with us, of course, right now we can't do much work because of the situation in the country, but we have been working out in the field and we hope to do it again soon once the conditions come back to normal. I'm so thankful to our speaker today, Dr. Dharmasena, who will be formally introduced by Professor Shiromi Karunaratne in due course, for agreeing to be the resource person at this webinar. And of course, the moderator for the session, Dr. Banduni Athapattu. And let me also take this opportunity to thank the Honorary Secretary of IEPSL, Ajit Athugala, Professor Banduni Athapattu, and the team from IESL who attended to the details of organizing this seminar enthusiastically. And even right now, working in the background, making sure that the webinar will go on without any glitches. I hope all of you who are joining us will actively participate in the discussion and all of us will have a wonderful experience this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam. Now I would like to invite Mr. Shantasiri, Head of the International Liaison Division of the National Science Foundation, to deliver his opening remarks.
Tilina, can my voice clearly heard?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. Thank you, Tilina, and good evening, everyone. Professor Niranjani Ratnayaka, President IPESL, Engineer Mrs. Bhadra Kamaladasa, Chairperson, Water Forum, IESL, Professor Shiromi, Section C, GRC, / and Professor Banduni Athapattu, member, GRC, and former Chairperson, GRC / and our guest speaker today, Dr. P.B. Dharmasena. First of all, I would like to thank IESL and SLAS being joint partner with the NSF and giving opportunity to share few thoughts. I will not going to take much time, but in briefly, being the National Science Foundation, one of the key mandates is we have a mandate for sustainable utilization of natural resources and sustainable utilization or mainstreaming the indigenous knowledge to the today's context. So that is where NSF come into the equation to the today's event. Apart from that, of course, with leadership of Professor Banduni, and we partnered with the ISL and SLAS to conduct a series of webinars for which will have a greater impact and with synergy and complementarity. So I plan to share a couple of ideas which will shed a light to the today's topic from the international perspective. Just to share with some couple of thoughts which will highlight the importance or the gravity of the today's topics, how it is important. United Nations World Water Development Report 2020 clearly highlights the importance of water resources management because as highlighted by our previous speaker, our water resources become scarcity resource, which has been threatened by many challenges. What do you call it? Is a compounding effect where enhanced groundwater pollution, reduced rainfall, climate change, all at the end of the day affect the water resources, finally affecting the society as a whole. As highlighted in the report, with the human activities and unsustainable manner of developments, it highlights in the natural water resources, the dissolved oxygen level has been drastically reduced and temperature has been increased, which obviously a threat to the biodiversity. And also the demand for water has been increased not only for the agriculture purpose, but with the industrial purpose, maybe energy generation and etc. So therefore, also aquifer withdrawal of the aquifer also have been increased, while threats are compounding from the factors I already highlighted. So if we all as a society and relevant stakeholders, government institutions do not take preventive or precautionary actions, preparatory, proactive execution of a relevant framework, it will ultimately affect our water resources and ultimately as the society as a whole. So where ancient water heritage come into the equation, and it has become today a very important and timely topic because our ancestors' ancient water heritage depict what is proper planning, creativity, and sustainable water resource management, well depicted. And also, I went to an article published in the Water Policy, which is a journal, official journal of the World Water Council. It is an index in the Science Citation Index, of course, somewhat impact factor 1.5, where some external, foreign authors, 3 authors have been published the article where they recommend at the end of their publication, the Sri Lanka sustainable water resource management, ancient water resource management will be a role model for the rest of the developing countries in the today's context. That's why I want to highlight, of course, even Sri Lanka while tackling the emerging challenges with the climate change and water resource threatening factors, to tackle and mitigation and adaptation, while harnessing the modern technology, we can't forget the practices, sustainable practices as a lesson from the past, which will clearly highlight by our today eminent speaker, Dr. Dharmasena. So I'm not going to go into further talk, and I want to highlight that today's topic is very timely, and our audience will get enlightened, because at the end of the day, not only this will be a webinar, so that all the stakeholders will come to consensus. Finally, with the recommendations, we will have a collective and concerted effort, so that we will have kind of a sound framework or actionable plan at the ground level, so that we will mitigate and adapt for the climate change and the water resource management as a whole, as a nation, for the benefit of the society, as highlighted by our previous speaker. That's all from the NSF side. Thank you very much, Telina, and the organizing committee.
Thank you very much, Mr. Shantasiri. Now we are reaching the main focus of this event, the speech on ancient water heritage of Sri Lanka. To introduce the speaker, I'd like to invite Professor Shiromi Karunaratne, member of Section C and General Research Committee of the Sri Lanka Association for the Advancement of Science, and also a professor in civil engineering at the Sri Lanka Institute of Information Technology. Over to you, madam.
Okay, thank you very much. Very good morning to evening to you all. I'm trying to keep this very short as we have already ran into the speaking time of Dr. Dharmasena. It's my privilege and pleasure to introduce one of our eminent speakers today. He's a researcher and academic, as well as an experienced practitioner with more than 80 local and international publications. Dr. P.P. Dharmasena, let me introduce you very shortly, though he has vast experience gathered during his over the years. Dr. Dharmasena graduated from University of Peradeniya in 1971, obtained his master's degree in agricultural engineering from the same university, and his PG diploma in soil sciences from University of Norway in 1983. Subsequently, in 1992, he completed his PhD in geography from the University of Peradeniya, Sri Lanka. During his career, he has worn many hats in his to his credit. He has worked as a research officer as well as the deputy director of the Department of Agriculture. He's a consultant and expert in agriculture and water resources. So without further ado, let me hand over the podium to you, Dr. Dharmasena. Over to you. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. Good evening to all of you. Can you all hear me?
Yes, sir, well.
Okay,
Yes,
thank you
we
very
can.
much.
Yes.
Okay. Professor Niranjani Ratnayaka, Professor Banduni Atapattu, who really initiated this one. And I just want to make a mention on Dr. Kamal Laksiri, who took all initiatives to start this kind of topic about 1 year ago. And Mr. Shantasri from NSF, Engineer Bhadra Kamaladasa, Chairman of Water Forum, ISL, and Professor Shiromi Karunaratne. And also, my dear friends, this is a very pleasant evening. Generally, we used to have this kind of webinar in the evening because it's good for you all, convenient and comfortable. If I share with you the presentation today, as we have already heard, we have titled that one as Ancient Water Heritage of Sri Lanka. We know that we are proud of being Sri Lankan. To say that we are Sri Lankans, because one of the reasons for that is our heritage, water heritage. And under this one, the objective of presentation today is multi-purpose, really. And we know that when we understand our water heritage, there are known and unknown part of this water heritage, because some knowledge that has been buried already, and some are to understand still. And we have, unfortunately, we have distorted some of these heritage aspects without knowing the importance of that. And the objective is to collect all these professionals together and try to explore this heritage more and more comprehensively through a multidisciplinary approach. Generally, we know that our history is explored by historians and sometimes supported by archaeologists. But there is a gap between this knowledge because of our hydrologists, geologists, and architects are not much involved in that. So here today, what I want to do is to invite all of them by sparking this one for a certain extent, because I don't think that within this very limited time we can cover all this. But the content I use here, only 4 aspects. One is Ancient Water Management Master Plan of Sri Lanka. Then old city, Anuradhapura, built on groundwater. Then rooftop rainwater harvesting system, Pidurangala. Then traditional water management in village tanks. So I think that I may be able to manage this within the time that given by the organizers. And in this one, I just want to mention that the webinar has been organized by Institute of Engineers Sri Lanka Water Forum in collaboration with Section C of the Sri Lanka Association for the Advancement of Science and Institute of Environmental Professionals Sri Lanka and National Science Foundation. I hope that there are a large number of people should be here to understand our heritage. So it's a discussion that I should start, then we can make some discussion on this one to understand it clearly. I just want to tell you that these are incomplete studies. Incomplete studies. So when you go to this heritage, I should say that multi-purpose aspects here, not only irrigation. Sometimes we misunderstand the word water civilization. It's not only meant for irrigation. Yes, it is true that it is the main part of that. For food production, we use irrigation. But for human needs, settlement, drinking water, bathing, recreation, domestic needs, everything is there. So they have made this planning, not only for irrigation. And also, although we are now talking about rainwater harvesting at different levels, macro level as well as micro level. Our ancestors have adapted this kind of rainwater harvesting systems long ago. Then our people loved environment, and they always felt that the existence of flora, fauna, and our environs is the secret for our survival. Now we have forgotten that one. Then city planning, especially main examples, I will give you Anuradhapura and Sigiriya. We will talk about this one later. And also parks, landscaping, etc. Especially fountains in Sigiriya. Ponds in Anuradhapura city. Why they have done it for the purposes, many purposes. Then one thing I want to disclose is that our administrative boundaries, although it is not now based on water, early it was based on water. Then also, frequently we are experiencing disasters, flood, drought, cyclone, epidemics. These ancestors have planned the water resources to mitigate this flood risk, drought risk, cyclone, epidemics, etc. That is what we are discussing today. So the first one is they have done water management master plan of Sri Lanka at different levels. Country level, then from one river to the other, river basin level, then inter-reservoir level, from one reservoir to the other, because all reservoirs are not getting enough water. Some reservoirs are getting plenty of water. And also it will come down to sub-watershed level. We know that the famous Elanga or cascade systems, then even village level and also field level. So we are touching all this for a certain extent, but I don't think that we can have enough time. In our history, we say that Prince Vijay came from India. He really invaded our country. You know that in Mana area, we have Alirani Harbour, somewhere in Silavatura, then Kudiramale, that is just below that. Now with the Vijay came along this western coastal border using northeast monsoonal winds. Whatever the stories, epidemics that we heard, this is what happened. He did not stop as other sailors did at Alirani Harbour. He passed it and navigated to Kudiramale, Tammanna. At that time, there were 10 regional kings. Can you mute, please? There were 10 regional kings at that time, including the Prince Queni. Then finally what happened that with the support of Queni, Prince Vijay killed most of them. That was the end of 10 kingdoms of Sri Lanka. Shall we see that these 10 kingdoms, when we locate all these kingdoms, we find that we know that we have about 16 plus major river basins. And these particular kingdoms have covered all these main river basins. Kevesasta to cover the northern part, Kavastalaba, that is there to represent the Yangwe River Basin. Then Rakungiri, Ritigala, that's to cover Malatuya. Upulangiri, that's to cover Kalawaya. Like that, we have Indra, Agni, Mahagiri. You know that Mahavali, Kalu, Kalani, Valave, all these are covered by Mahagiri, the kingdom. then Dumaga Khadira, Daduroya, Chalaka, Miyoya, Venimos, Nilagiri, Modarganaru. So that 10 kingdoms are covering all these major river basins. Then coming to inter-river basin level, we have giant canals. One is Dambuloya Mallathoya Diversion Canal. Then the other one Mallathoya Kanadarawe Diversion Canal. Then Yodala Nachadu Feeder Canal. So all these giant canals are there to make a just fairness to share water from one river basin and within the river basin. Now this is one of our old map, 1 inch to 1 mile. There you find this giant canal, Yodala, starting from Kala Vava. It will move down to Tisavava and feed in Tisavava, Basavakulama, Nuaravava and Nachadu. Now, why we wanted to talk about this as the heritage of our Sri Lankan culture, it's a single bank canal, receiving water from the upper part. Then water is released to both sides. So it's not an general irrigation canal. Canal moves always along tank upstream. So you have a lot of tanks. You know that minor tanks are there as clusters. We call Elanga or tank cascade systems. So the beauty of this giant canal is to feed both sides. Now this is, if you can highlight this one, you can see that canal runs like this, not straight line, and it feeds, it is getting water from Manayava Cascade, it's giving water to Mahakanamula Cascade. And also in 1970s with the accelerated Mahavali development program, we distorted this Yodala without knowing the essence of this particular heritage. And also it runs almost along the contour. Now this is the contour, and you can see that this is running parallel. Now we have distorted this one. And inter-reservoir level, from reservoir to reservoir, we have giant canals. Kalava, Tisava, Yodala, Nachadu and Nuaravava, feeder canal. Balaluava, Sembalangamu, feeder canal. Then Basavakulama, Mahavilachya, feeder canal. One special thing I want to mention here, that our old city, Anuradhapura, is fed with groundwater getting from these reservoirs. I will go through that again and again. But now here, these giant canals are feeding to replenish the storage of Tisavava, Basavakulama, then Nuaravava here. And sometimes we used to visit Isurumuniya. When we visit Isurumuniya, we don't want to forget about this Stargate. Stargate, there's a very well-known view of that. Is it has some kind of entrance to other planets or other worlds or something like that. But if you can have a look closely, it could be the city plan of ancient Anuradhapura kingdom. So just make your mind free to go through this one. You can see that there's a water cordon in this plan, and you will find this Ulankulama, Basavakulama, Tisavava and Nuaravava. Those are focused to the main city. And this main city, here the plan is there in the nucleus, you can see the inner city. Yes, and also there are 4 entrances from four directions. That is here in the same Stargate model. So they must have had this one to plan the city, but it's not according to the plan, but this is just a symbol. And one of the very important thing is that all these reservoirs focus into nucleus like here, feeding the groundwater just to replenish the groundwater table there, like that. And when we see the map, here the inner city, these are the tanks. And also there are huge structures have been constructed there. You know that Tuparame, Jetavanarame, Ruwanelsai, Lower Mahapai, and Mirisavetiya, and all these are on that ground. This water culture in the Anuradhapura kingdom, we have to study in detail. One is that according to the Stargate plan of city, water cordon around the kingdom, Tisavawa, Nuwarawa, Basavakulam and Bulankulam, those tanks are there to cover the water cordon. Then that is focused to enrich groundwater in the kingdom. Now, one of the reasons here, that the paddy lands under these tanks are relatively low and catchments are not adequate, then these reservoirs are fed by an adjoining river basin, Kalawaya. And also, you know that along the rivers, we know Mallatoya and Helpanoya and some more branches there. All these are having alluvial soils. So sand layers there beneath. Our study should focus to know how these gigantic structures could be sustained. We have a hard bedrock to tap groundwater. There are 2 types of rocks, granitic gneiss and Chanukitic gneiss. Here you can see how it spreads. This is granitic gneiss, this part, and this band, and the other part is Charnockite gneiss. You can see, you know that geologists have classified these 2. One is under igneous rock. Earlier it was believed that this is also igneous, but it's not igneous, it's metamorphic. So a lot of minerals are tapped here. And when you compare this, the weathering process is taking place here slowly and here relatively fast. And also, when you go around this Anuradhapura city, you will find a lot of water holes, moats, then ponds and wells. And also, one of the beautiful things that you can notice that all these are stepped out, not to just to get down into these ponds, but there are some other reasons. Now, one can monitor the water level by looking at this. So everywhere you find this one, these steps like, and also it spreads all over the city, ponds, moats, wells and all. So people can monitor easily. If the water level goes down, that means groundwater depletes. Then if there is something happen, they have to recover that by feeding them, by using all these tanks. Once the tanks are getting dried, then it can be fed by Kalawawa and Balaluwawa using Jodala. And what I wanted to tell you that there's a trend. There's a trend. It's a trend in all over the world that cities are getting sunk. This is due to land subsidence. When you see all these names, it will show that world's most cities are sinking now at the moment. We will take few examples. One is Beijing in China, Bangkok in Thailand, then this Mexico City. Like that, we will see what is happening there. And in some places, they have made their efforts to replenish groundwater to prevent this subsidence. Beijing in China, they have observed 11 centimeter per year. Mexico by 28 centimeter per year. And Jakarta by 28 centimeter per year. Bangkok by 12 centimeter per year. In some towns, some cities, they have already recovered by feeding with groundwater. Why we want to talk about all this? Because when you have land subsidence, engineers know that there can be crack formation of the structures. These structures may be buildings or something else. Now, if you look at here, we can learn that what contributes to this kind of sinking phenomenon. One is the weight of buildings. Now, USA, you have a lot of buildings. So weight of the buildings, then groundwater depletion and shifting of tectonic plates. These are the main reasons. Now, if you look at this one, weight of the buildings, how weight is, the impact of that is minimized by using groundwater. So when groundwater depletes, then buildings are with very huge buildings with a very high weight, then there is a threat. Coming to our situation, this is Ruwanelsae, then this is Jethavanarame. Now the cracks are formed. That is reported already. Vertical cracks in Ruwanelsae and 4 cracks in Jethavanarame. So why we wanted to study the water heritage, just not a kind of pride that we should have. Yes, it is true, but also sometimes we can identify some threats at the beginning. So this is most probably due to groundwater depletion. Then coming back to very nice, one of our heritages again, Sigiriya. Sigiriya is a tourist attraction, and I think once in our life, we might have had the chance to visit these places. But I am sure that we have not visited all. Now, these rocks are there, vertical flows, and also some fountains we can find at the water garden 1 or 2. How they have activated, how they have operated this one, still it's a puzzle. When we have rains at the moment even, this will activate. But it's not like good fountains to about 15 to 20 feet high, but it's still working. And also you can see that when we walk from Water Garden 1 towards the rock Sigiriya, we have to go at a high elevation, and this elevation must have been used to get the head to create these fountains. Okay, now coming to Sigiriya, there is another one we should visit, that is Pidurangala. It's about 1 kilometer distance apart. there's a difference between this Sigiri and Pidurangala. Pidurangala is kind of top is not like Sigiri, not dome type, but it's kind of somewhat flat. If we have this kind of flow pitch nearby, don't you think that these Sigiriakins must have been in need of clean drinking water collecting from rainfall using this sun? That is my question. We can find a lot of water conveyance canals or tubes or pipes, open ditches, then pipes, clay pipes. These are not that much buried, almost on the surface, but it's underground. Now this kind of one, sealed subterranean conveyance, this has gone down to about 10 to 15 feet. So there is a possibility of taking these sealed conveyance structures will create a head difference when it comes to the outlet. Now, if you look at this one, this is the plan. You can find Water Garden 1 here, Water Garden 2 here, where you can find fountains. Then Water Garden 3 here, either side of that. And also there's another garden, Boulder Garden, where we find another special type of pond, octagonal pond, we call Atapattam Poguna. And when we map this one using contours, you can find that the elevation difference from Pidurangala to fountains is about 324 minus 204, about 120 or something. So it's not possible to make that happen with a very high pressure. It is not manageable pressure. So what they might have done is to convey that here. There's a place here. We have to investigate this one. And there's another place here. We have to investigate this one. And finally, they will come up with very, very small head difference like 214, 212, then 204 about. The difference is 8 meters. That means 26 feet. That will make the opportunity to create these fountains. So somebody can suspect it, but we have to see some more details in this. That is why I say that all these are incomplete studies. Then if you look at this one, here there is another pond we call Atapattam Poguna, octagonal pond, relatively at a higher elevation. It's 212 meter elevation. Fountain ponds are 204 meter elevation. And also, if you find this one, you can see Sigiriya tank. Some people believe that the water is coming from Sigiriya tank. Sigiriya tank, 204 meter, Fountain Garden, 204 meter, almost equal. But octagonal ponds, 212 meter, so head difference is about 26 feet. So somebody can assume that water is collected, stored here, and feed through this underground pipes to make the pressure, to create fountains. But how we get water here? Because this is a kind of waste we can see, although it is so much beautiful. Some people believe that this water is coming from rock top of Sigiriya. But I don't see that the possibility of having this one, because there's a very limited storage there on the top of Sigiriya, and this water is conveyed here and create these fountains. It will be a utter waste. So what I want to tell you that somebody will think about this flow pitch must have been used for this particular purpose. Now, if you go and visit these places, just at the bottom of this Vidurangala, you will find a lot of boulders, but there are some cracks. Those are just perpendicular to the natural decay lines. That is something we have to think about, because it should be due to some kind of huge explosion. Otherwise, it must have cracked along these natural decay curves, decays. And when you go to this place, we had the opportunity to visit this place last year with some members of the Water Forum, especially Dr. Kamal Laksiri and some more engineers. Then we found we have visited all these. We walked around and see that the edges are bent just to avoid water flowing away from this flow pitch. And also, this is about 2 hectares. It's not small area. And we found that this part is convex and below part is concave. And also, we found that on the top of this water has been diverted through ditches towards this particular flow pitch. This is man-made. And these are the group members of our visit. You can see some of these very familiar faces in Water Forum. And on the flow pitch, we find a lot of conveyance canals. Especially, we notice that those are man-made, because if it is not man-made, the depression may be in the shape of the source. But here you get some sharp walls. So it shouldn't be natural. And also, when water comes through, there is a filtering effect. This is called cascades. So when you come along this sun, you will find that water is flowing, passing through these cascades. It's kind of filtering action has been taking place. This filtering action you will find everywhere, and finally it comes to this particular well or water hole just to deposit all these sediments before it goes out. Here the place that finally we came to this point, and water will flow here like this, and it comes to this point and will get stuck here, and after that no one knows what will happen to this water. And also you can notice that on the top of this rock you find we call balancing stone. When you have a close look at this one, there's a mold. In this mold, as we notice there, the rock top, concave and convex, now it is the other way around. It's a mirror image of that. We can consider this as a mold. You can see here and also here, the same shape is there. So our ancestors had the practice of making the mold first before we construct a big one, huge one. So what we wanted to know about this one, not to get your eyes too large to see and see, it's a wisdom, no. But if you just calculate this one, and if you assume that we have a runoff over the rock, it's about 80%. Monthly rainfall we found, finally, it will be summed up to about 10,000 cubic meters. So what it means? Yes, one can reject this historical perception as a myth. Okay, no problem. But according to calculations, at least 10,000 cubic meters of water, fresh water coming directly from rainfall, will be collected somewhere because of this flow pitch. So what I suggest that if this system, if rehabilitated, will supply annual water storage of 10,000 cubic meters to the people who are living around and are threatened with the chronic renal disease with unknown etiology, CKDU. That is the importance of exploring this kind of heritage technology, not just to know because of the curiosity. Now, even now, when it rains, you will find that what is flowing here. But due to some other damages, it flows somewhere here also. If the daily drinking water requirement is, say 3 liters per head, the problem of annual drinking water requirement of 9,000 people can easily be solved. So what I suggest that because of our water is polluted with calcium and fluoride, even those days, they must have had this planning to get water using this macro level rainwater harvesting system. And also, when you take the Sri Lankan map and place all these old reservoirs on this map, and also if you can draw the contour line 150 meter, you can see that all these reservoirs are just hanging around this contour line. I can't explain how they did it, but Kantale, Huruluava, Minneriya, Giritale, Parakrama Samudra, Maduroya, Mapa Kadavava, then Kalavava, Balaluava, all these reservoirs are there or below that. So they must have had some kind of technical measures or tools to locate these big reservoirs. And when we see that, even now this is in Anuradhapura district, you can find a network of canals and tanks which are formed as clusters, and those are just above these big reservoirs. Kanadharava, Nachadu, Huruluava, here Kalava and Balaluava, here Vilachia. Now these clusters, we could be able to study this in detail, and we found that those are well organized, hydrologically interlinked tanks, and they have constructed these tanks for different purposes. That is the beauty of this tank cascade systems. Early in 1985, Professor Madhum Bandar has defined this as a cascade. It's a connected series of tanks organized within a micro-catchment or meso-catchment of the dry zone landscape, storing, conveying, and utilizing water from an ephemeral rivulet. So this is all about water. Now we came to understand that not only water, whether it is governed by water, it's yes, but there's some other aspects here. So we had to change the definition, ecology-based definition like this. Tank cascade is an ecosystem where water and land resources are organized within the microcatchments of the dry zone landscape, providing basic needs to human, floral, and faunal communities through water, soil, air, and vegetation, and also with human intervention on sustainable basis. This is the spirit that we can get from this particular cascade systems. I don't think that we have enough time to go through all, but here at the village level, we have a well-organized system. Some people can see that yes, it is only a water feed into paddy fields. It's not. This tank village system has been organized with a lot of macro and micro land users to make one unique system. It is unique to Sri Lanka, and we cannot see that anywhere in the world. Because of that, we could be able to get declared this as a globally important agriculture heritage system by United Nations. This is the first we have declared, and this is the 39th of the world agricultural heritage systems. And we find that these micro land uses like upstream water hole, we call Godawala, then filter here meadow, that is Perahana, then strip of trees here, either side of that, that's we call Gasgommana, and there are some man-made ridges here, soil ridges, either side of that is set here. So all these will help to make this crystal clear water body. And also, you will find the other way around. Now here, once this water comes to the paddy field should be able to get enriched with fertility, that is true, and allow our paddy to grow there with a good vigorous growth. So for that one, we get a lot of things like Gangoda will feed some fertilizer here, this Bombay, yes, and Landa, and Kattakadu will filter the water coming from tank, and it will provide good water, good quality water to the paddy field. So paddy field is a sustainable and stable yield giving system here. So that we know that all these things are interrelated and well organized to make this system sustainable. And now if we are going to this, how they could be able to release water from tanks, that is the irrigation water. Now if you go to this Madurvayas in 6th century, you know that 6th century BC, that is where when we get this invader Vijaya and invaded our country, at that time we had this kind of structures here in Sri Lanka. And if you see that this is the sluice inlet, and you will see some cavities here, purposely made. Here you can see cavities, why they wanted to have it. And at the same time, we can see that prehistoric burials, stone burials, and megalithic burials, and the same kind of shape and rocks are there. And this is also 6th century BC. So that is the technology that they had for all. And finally, it has been evolved, this ancient sluice, from 6th century BC. Then 3rd century BC, you know that this is from Urusitaya in southern part. Then this is Kalava, 5th century AD. So it has gone through an evolution. Finally, it came up as a technology which is unique to Sri Lanka, and other people have borrowed this technology to construct their sluices. And this is the principle there. When you get water under pressure because of the water level, the pressure is dissipated here in a this opening. Then it will go without any kind of high pressure. So it will not damage the dam. That is the main advantage of this Bisoko tool. Visokotua means Bassa-Ukotua. That means the pressure has been dropped here and it has helped water to release under low pressure. And at small tanks, we have another kind of sluice we call Katahorova. This is also something very technically perfect, because when you put this one, you will get water just mixed with air here on the surface, and it is not having much poisonous or kind of impurities which will harm the paddy fields. So that Katahorova, with these pieces of pipes, when you remove one part, it will remove water layer here, which will be different from one cutter to other, so that they have very good calculation. When you remove one cutter or piece of this pipe, they must have had kind of calibration here. This is called Diyakata Pahana. Pahana means Pashana, that is rock. And also there's another one we call Karahana. It's a wooden structure. We have different width and depth. These cuts are in different, because then you will find different flows through this one. Why they wanted to have it? Because now when you want to distribute water to different pieces of paddy fields, different sizes, and the soil is different. So they have a measure here to get this water into that in a time that this particular field is fed by this particular cut at the same time. This is very important, at the same time. Now we know that this is a Weir formula. If you can use, this can be done, but all these days, I don't know how they could be able to calculate this one and put these cuts there. Now here you can see the difference in these cuts and difference of this. When you open the sluice, water will flow through all these three. Then once you close it, all these paddy fields in different sizes and with different soils will get replenished adequately for the growth of paddy. So that is what I say, that there are a lot of things we can learn from this water heritage. And also there are some threats that we can notice, and also we can apply a lot of things. And the heritage, the knowledge that we can transmit from generation to generation, we have to preserve it. That is the message that we have to pass now at the moment. So thank you very much. And we have discussed 4 points. One is Ancient Water Management Master Plan. Old city Anuradhapura, replenished with groundwater, built up on groundwater, rooftop rainwater harvesting system at Vidurangala. Then finally, we discussed about traditional water management in village tanks. So I have just selected few and explain you something that we have here to think about how we can go ahead with this technology. Thank you very much for your patient listening. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that interesting and informative presentation, sir. Now we are going to have the questions and answers session, and I'd like to invite Professor Banduni Athapattu from presenting both the Institution of Engineering Sri Lanka as well as the Sri Lanka Association for the Advancement of Science to take over. Thank you, madam.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Tilina, and thank you very much, Dr. Dharmasena, for a very informative and very interesting presentation. And when you were talking about it and what has happened in Sri Lanka in the ancient time. And so I'd like to open the forum for the questions. Some people have asked several questions, Dr. Dharmasena, in the chat area. So I'll forward those questions to you. And if there are anything, please, please put your questions into the chat area. And also that I'd like to mention to our participants, okay, we know that you are very much appreciating this one, but I'd like that if you are stopping the post of thank you, because I'd like to concentrate on the questions in the chat area, then okay. So thank you very much for your participation as well as, but I'd like to, yeah.
Professor,
Okay.
before you start, I just want to make one suggestion. I know that in this virtual audience, there are a lot of professionals like engineer Bhadra Kamaladasa, and I know she is competent enough to answer a lot of things. So shall we make a discussion here rather than questioning and answering?
That's good, right? Okay. So anybody that who would like to ask questions, so I'd like to give the chance. You can open your mic. I'm not sure with the mic, they have closed all the mics, but I'll check it. But while doing that, so I'll ask one question that what they have put into the chat area.
Yes.
Actually, that is difficult to find out because of many thanking notes are there. So somebody has mentioned about that. It's not the one. Sorry for that. And
hello.
Hello. So is there any question? So you can ask.
Yes, I'm Dr. Bohingama from the University of Ruhuna.
Okay.
Hello, sir.
Please go ahead.
Yes. Yeah, thank you very much for this very informative talk. And what is more important for me is that you showed two images. One is of Diyakatapahana, the other one is Karahankote. Sir, can you tell us where did you find them?
You know that we have been investigating for last 30 years. I'm not sure whether we can find it in the field at the moment, but only the photograph that I have, Karahankote. And if you take this Diyakatapahana, yes, you can see now. If you go to, if you pass Tirappane, when you're going to Anuradhapura, you can find one tank called Alisthana.
Sorry, sir?
Alisthana, the tank Alisthana. It's in Tirappane cascade system, one tank, Alisthana, you find that. But remember, this rock kind of measurements are not always in all tanks. Sometimes they use trees, sometimes they use some other rocks, and sometimes they use kind of columns. So according to the availability of those things, they use that as Diyakatapahana. Diyakata means that, as I told you, Diyakata is that piece of pipe. And Diyakata means not always similar. The upper part of Diyakata is with big volume of water, but when you go down to the sluice sill level, then you will find there is small amount of water there. So Diyakatapahana is calibrated or marked as according to that. That is the wisdom of this Diyakatapahana. Yes. Professor Banduni? Professor Banduni, can you hear me?
Sorry that I was muted. Okay. Mr. Peer is asking a question whether in the top of Sigiriya that, yeah, Mr. Peer, are you there?
I'm there.
Yeah,
Okay,
please
my-
ask your question, please. Yeah,
Yeah,
please forward your question.
Thank you very much, Dr. Dharmadasa. I'm joining from Melbourne.
Dr. Dharmasena, yes.
Dharmasena, sorry. The question is this, I mean, we talk about these fountains and they are connected with the water flow from the top of the Sigiriya mountain and Pidurangala and all these things. Has anyone traced these water flows or any attempts been done? You mentioned about the differences in the heights of various ponds and the measures taken to manage the head of water. So all these things, and then you came up with the chart about Anuradhapura, about the Pidurangala with the
Mr. Peer, shall we let him to answer your first question?
Yeah, okay, go ahead. Yeah, please.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, now there are different views. How this fountains has been activated and still it is working. How it happens. There are different views. Some people say that water has been raised to the top of Sigiriya and got this pressure again once it flows down. That is one. The second one is that they must have had some kind of conveyance from Sigiriya tank. Okay. Then third one is that they must have collected water in this orthogonal pond or something where we have some storages. And you know that the water gardens are having always ponds and moats. Now, for example, Water Garden 3, it's the palace. We have moats around the palace, and those are this water. They must have had from top of the Sigiriya mountain. Now, when you travel to that, when you climb to top of Sigiriya rock, you will find ponds, yes. And some people believe that this water is stored from rainfall, and some people believe that it has been raised from ground to get these ponds filled. So there are different views. And still, what I suggest is also is open to more and more investigation. That is why I say at the beginning that those are incomplete thesis or incomplete studies. So what I suggest that generally archaeologists are excavating these things and coming up with a lot of stories. Yes, very good. I know that my friend is there from Rajarata University, Archaeology Department, Professor Chandana Vitanachi. And some people are there making views according to their knowledge. Yes, now what the time has come to get a multidisciplinary approach for these investigations. Archaeologists, hydrologists, geologists, and architects, and also sociologists, geographers, and agriculture people. So this must be a multidisciplinary team to go through this, investigate with different aspects of these sectors. That is what I mean, that we have not concluded anything. So this is a start. Thank you for the question.
Thank you, Dr. Dharmasena. Now, I think Dr. Peer is asking another question, the similar type, but he's asking that what about the water table and the transmission of water through the groundwater tables? He's concentrating on that, what you mentioned about the groundwater in ancient Anuradhapura kingdom.
Yes, there are some investigations carried out very recently. They found that the water level just around Sri Mahabodhi is somewhat connected to Basavakulama tank. And also we can find one well nearby Tuparama Stupa, and it is connected through some kind of tunnel to Vasakulam tank. So these are not yet investigated, I say, but there is a possibility of having that kind of interconnected water conveyance network within the city, not only in Anuradhapura, but also in Sigiriya.
Dr. Mr. Rohan, that you are hands up, so you can ask your question now. Mr. Rohan? Okay, he's not there. So any other questions?
Engineer Bhadra Kamaldas is there?
Yeah, Madam, Engineer
Come
Bhadra
and join,
Kamaldas,
please.
yeah, please,
come and join
yes, you can
this
comment
discussion.
on your ideas now, actually.
Yeah, actually, what I have to say is, when talking about the ancient irrigation heritage, it's like an iceberg. So what we see in our naked eye is like a very minute part, whereas a huge unknown knowledge is yet to be discovered. So I think now Dr. Dharmasena is one of the, few who has shown interest and going into such details. And there are many more. I can see Dr. Chandana is also here. He is doing a lot of work from archaeology side. And as Dr. Dharmasena said, there are a lot of areas that teamwork is necessary to go ahead with, to explore the ancient technology. Still, even though we were working in the irrigation department, we were, tied up with the day-to-day work or development work, did not have much time. Even the current staff, they do not have much time to go into the details of archaeology and in ancient technology. So that is the, I think, the responsibility of the professional organizations to organize another team to get that information, with especially with the support of the universities, and bring those to the knowledge of the general public, and especially for the younger generation. So that's a general comment I can make at this moment, Doctor and Banduri.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Madam. So now Vasra Jaiman asking a question: how can we bring in this knowledge of our ancient water heritage into the decisions on climate change adaptation? Or also she's telling nationally determined contributions. So can you elaborate on it?
Yes, that's a very important question. Really, I missed that part in this presentation. Just I touched that natural disasters. When you go back to, if you can remember that Tank Village ecosystem, we have studied this one against these natural disasters. When you take flood is absorbed by these clusters of tanks. And when you take drought, yes, we have these tanks to replenish groundwater. And cyclone, there are a lot of circles of trees in these tank ecosystems. And also epidemics. So epidemics means most of these are waterborne. If water is clear and it is always good for drinking purposes, I don't think that these epidemics will take place very haphazardly, because this water is polluted with a lot of sediments, and nowadays we know that the use of agrochemicals and inorganic fertilizer all these polluted water. In 1960s, I can remember when I was a small child, we drank tank water, definitely, because it's very, very safe and no pollution has taken place. So that is the change that we had due to our some kind of interventions like introduction of a green revolution. I don't think that because this particular debate will go on for a next another kind of presentation, so that I don't want to go into so much details. But there are ways and means of addressing our climate change using our technology, but with some modifications. Thank you very much for the question.
Thank you, sir. Now, Ms. Nisanka again asking, okay, similar question, or like she's like to add some, okay, give some extension to that question. The question is, how can we incorporate this knowledge to solve climate change adaptation, and especially land use changes and social dynamics? I think you have answered partly, but if you can elaborate on the land use changes as well as the social dynamics, then that would be much appreciated.
Yes, now we have to study, and we have already studied these land use changes and social setup changes in social setup. Now those happen with time, and ignorance of our culture in Sri Lanka, especially in the tri-zone, we have ignored, and we have to have a lot of external factors, economic factors especially, which have distorted our social setup and also economics of these people. Because of that, they had to change their minds, they have to change their practices, and they have run after money. That is the need of that particular society. So that they have done a lot of changes, and they have forgotten, and also they were compelled to forget because of these trends, economic trends and the agricultural trends coming from outside. That is what happened to us. So that getting into a reverse direction, very, very difficult, but it is not impossible.
Thank you, sir. Now, LK Bandar asking a bit longer question. Basically, he's asking that, okay, we have already damaged 50% of our ancient water heritage through the Mahavali project. So whether we can, do you have any suggestions to, to get it back or to do something? Simply, he's asking to explain the qualities of heritage which have not been damaged. I think it's more important. Okay, Ms. Bandar, if you are there, that you can ask your questions, or that if sir can understand that the question, that he can answer. Ms. Bandar.
Yeah, I can understand. Yeah, I can understand the question that he's asking. The problem is I am not in a position to answer individually because it has happened here in Sri Lanka, not only in Mahavali area. The most smart example that I have given, that Yodel, what happened? Can we make a reverse? Very difficult to answer, because one of these confession made by the engineer, I can name him, Engineer Mahinda Panapitiya, who must be here in the virtual audience sometime. He said that yes, we didn't understand the real basic principle of this giant canal, but now we realize, and he made the confession. You can refer that article in Economic Review, and also you can contact Mr. Mahinda Panapitiya, Engineer Mahinda Panapitiya, and get a lot of information. And that is only one example, but there are a lot of possibilities here. Still, we can improve that system based on our indigenous technology.
So another question from Samila Bandara. What sort of historical proof is there about B1, the water management in the central hill areas?
Sorry,
What is
it's not clear.
Yeah. What sort of historical proof is there about the water management in the central hill areas?
Central?
Hilly areas like central.
You mean
mountains,
Central
let's say.
Highland?
Yeah, Central Highlands, yes.
Central Highland. You know that when we are learning about this watershed management, always we are following a principle that in any kind of river basin or watershed, you can get a upper area for water absorption or collection. Then the mid area is reserved for water storing. That is where we get a lot of reservoirs. And the lower part of the watershed is meant for utilization of water. This is the principle. In our country, the most damage that we made with the introduction of tea, we have removed our head, and forest is there to collect water, but now the tea is there to chase water downward. So with sediments, that is the problem. And also now, if we can't go back without considering the importance of tea, what we can do, we can convert this whole tea plantations into agroecosystems. So that will take care, some to a certain extent, the water yield from these Central Highlands. So Central Highland is there to collect water, absorb water from rainfall, and that will solve the real purpose of this watershed management. Now, at the moment, we have a group of people who are involved in this preparation of water policy, and at the moment, we are working with strategic directives that we should have to implement the policy. So there we are considering about how we can use these changes, how we can do without making any damage. That is our main concern.
Thank you, sir. The next question can I ask Mr. Pratap Ravindra, and then I'll give the chance to Mr. Piris once again. Mr. Pratap?
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Dharmasena, for the informative presentation. I am Ravindra from Sydney. You reminded me, I mean, I was working with Mahinda at Kalaweva. That was my first appointment, like a project engineer. He was one of the REs there. And we never knew anything about the what you just said, the repercussions of straightening the Yodala. I mean, we knew that Yodala was built 54 miles. It's non-silting, non-covering velocity. That's how it. When you build a canal, either it's cover or it will silt. But if you correctly calculate the velocity, it won't silt, neither silt nor cover. I think Bhadra will know much more about that. But what I have to say is, we had a pipe underground irrigation system built by World Bank in one of our blocks. It was a demand schedule system. When we were digging for those pipes, we found clay tiles you showed in your presentation in one of the blocks at Epavela. So thank you very much again for your presentation. You brought me my old memories back. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Ravindra. And Mr. Piris, that's your question? Mr. Grated Piris, are you there?
Now,
Yes. Please
we are talking about the heritage, and one of the most important aspects of heritage is how you use that heritage in our modern scenarios. Now, when we talk about water and water heritage, part of the country is underwater. There are very badly engineered roadworks and various other infrastructure that is causing this
Yeah.
damage in the country. Now,
Mr. Peris, your
there is a-
please,
there- there-
what your
yeah,
question? Yeah.
I'll put the question. There is a CRIP, Climate Resilience Improvement Project for the Kalani Valley. And in that, how can we use these aspects to mitigate the flood damage and to alleviate the disturbance that is occurring every year and the economic damage?
Mr. Peris, I think this question can answer by our engineer Batra Kamaladas. Madam, can you answer for that question?
Sure, yeah.
Anyway, we know that as Sri Lankan
Thank you.
who are here in Sri Lanka, we know that what's happening here. So, Madam, would you like to add
Yeah,
something?
actually, Bandhani, now I am, it's a very complicated question, and at the moment I am not in a position to answer that because we have not yet analyzed that the flood, what caused the damage. Now there are news items saying that people are saying that because this is because of not providing proper drainage. But I think in a forum like this, it is not nice for me to comment on based on the news items. I mean, without consulting the engineers involved, RDA engineers, and also the hydrologist involved. Sorry.
Yes. Yeah.
I think you can understand my
Yes,
question.
Mr. Peris, sorry for that. Okay. Yes,
I
sir.
can add something there. Can I?
Yes, yes, sir.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Now, I am not going to answer the question directly, but what the situation we have, if I go back to the water management master plan here we had in Sri Lanka, it will answer a question for certain extent. Now, if you take some rivers like Gin, Kalu, Kalani, Nilwala, you get about 60 to 70% flow into sea, discharge into sea annually. And also if you take the other way, Yangwaya, Deduruaya, Malatuaya, and Kalawaya, those is discharging annual water to sea around 10 to 20%. What is the difference is that absorbing points are there within the watershed. So many tanks, so many big reservoirs, so that the excess water flowing into sea is very minimal. You can imagine why we are getting this flood because of sudden flow of water into sea, 60 to 70% annually. So that once I suggested at a forum that can't we divert this water without harming downward areas with floods to other water scarce watersheds. Now it's a need. Sometime if you are going to do some economic analysis, you may come across with some other disadvantages, but you know how much we are dumping to support these victims, so many. So that I think it's high time to think about diversion of water from water enriched rivers to water scarce rivers. That's a macro level, but I know it's not the correct answer to come to this present flood situation, but I am just giving macro level decisions that we have to make to mitigate these disasters. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Yes.
Yeah, I just want to make another suggestion. I just want to get a view from Dr. Kamal Laksiri.
Yeah, Dr. Laksiri, are you there? If not, I have seen.
Yes, I am here. Yeah.
Yes, Dr. Laksiri, please go ahead.
So, sorry, I couldn't hear the question. Can you kindly repeat it?
No, not the question, Kamal. Just I want to get your views on, I mean, overall this discussions.
Yes. Yeah, I think first of all, I have to
actually, here that I'd like to put some question to you, because I have seen somebody was asking that if the things are coming from the water is going somewhere from the Pindurangala in top of the hill area. I know that we have done the isotope hydrology. So that using the isotope hydrology, I think we are able to find out from where this water comes out. So can you tell something about it? Yes.
Yeah, that's right. Actually, first of all, I have to mention now how all these came out now. Dr. Dharmasena is having a vast knowledge of this subject area, and he was not. It was not available to us, to the engineering community. So I think early last year, I was reading a Sunday newspaper article on this subject published by somebody else. There, his name was mentioned, and then through the editor, I contacted Dr. Dharmasena. That is how I got contacted him, and then had many discussions, and then we visited Pindurangala and started this work. And then there again, we discussed to form a team from the archaeology universities and we connected other organizations and to conduct a detailed study. Actually, as you mentioned, the isotope is a good solution we can do, but unfortunately with this COVID situation, we could not continue. We were to go there and do many other things. So we are hoping to continue this important study with the with all the stakeholders, the relevant departments. Hello.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. So we will go ahead, and I think ISL, the universities, the archaeology department, all of us can do contribute, and I think we should solve this puzzle and to find out all the details, how they did all this in the past. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Kamal Laksiri, Engineer Kamal Laksiri, who is from the Central CEB, Ceylon Electric Board, and one of our very good engineer who is the one who brought this. I would have to thank you by my personal thanks goes to him, and also that he has done some work on with the isotope hydrogen. I'm sure that in future, the person who has asked question, I hope that we can provide a good answer that where this water goes and from where it comes up. Right. Thank you very much. And the time is passing very quickly, and also that's near to 8:30. So if there are any question, I can give a chance to somebody to ask question or to put a good question to Dr. Dharmasena.
Sorry.
If there are no questions.
Yes.
Yes, please.
Hello, I'm Ranmala. I'm a hydrologist, and then
yes, Mr. Ranmala, please go ahead.
Yeah. Now, what is the reaction from the Department of Agrarian Services on these aspects? Because it is the Department of Agrarian Services who are in charge of most of these minor tanks, and some of the cascade I'm aware of in some of the new projects. They have taken into account the so-called cascade development in this. In some of the projects, this has been considered on the cascade development, but I don't know whether they have gone deep into this ancient system. Now, when I was doing the environmental impact assessment for this Madurave RB system, it was an ecological system, but the project did not come up for various reasons. But in the EIA, I suggested with that diagram, because there are so many small tanks inside the jungle, to at least use this concept and do something. And I'm aware that IUCN did a restoration of the Kapirigama cascade. Now, what is your idea? I'm not aware of the full details of the Kapirigama cascade after restoration. Is that functioning well? Are you aware of this?
Thank you very much for the question. I was there as the lead researcher for this Kapirigama ecosystem restoration project. organized and implemented by IUCN with the financial assistance of HSBC. What we have done there, we adopted the participatory approach using our all communities with their grievances and also suggestions. We came to a point that in some places we have adopted partial desilting concept to remove sediments and change the geometry. That is one. The second thing is that we have restored some of these micro land uses like Gaskomana, Kattakadu and all. And people are very happy about that. And we could not go ahead with a lot of things, especially institutional part we missed. So that we made an evaluation there. And this report says that somebody should take up the baton there and go ahead with the lessons learned from Kaparigama tank restoration project.
How is the reaction from the Department of Agrarian Services on these concepts? If at all we want to do, of course, they have to come strongly on this.
Yes, I accepted that we have to agree with that, but unfortunately, I don't know whether Engineer Prabhat is with us. Because I am not from Department of Agrarian Development. Engineer Prabhat is there? No.
Seems that he is not here.
Okay.
Professor Chandana, who is from University of Rajarata, is that so, Dr. Dharmasena?
Professor Chandana Vitanachi, I think he should be here. Yes.
Yeah, he's here. Professor
Yeah,
Chandana,
I'm here.
yes,
Okay.
would you please add something, because we'd like to, I know that you were working with Dr. Dharmasena, that I'd like to, because with your some talk that I'd like to finish our Q&A session.
Actually, I think your Dr. Dharmasena's presentation is very good. It's a new, he explained to try to new vision how our water heritage developed. I think our village tax system create from our protohistoric period. According to our experiment, excavation and explorations, some migrate burial sites found datings very similar that places, especially our dry zone area, Yarnoya Basin, Mioy Basin, and Malotoy Basin. So, normally, I think that tanks started around 1000 BC, 800 BC, whatever, around that period.
So, Professor Chandana, you have evidence to show that they have initiated these tanks in 800 BC.
Yeah. We actually Rajat University finished 2 excavation around Andarava, Palipota, 3 excavation, Andarava, Palipotana, and the one is Yarn. I forget this place. It's the
Yes.
actually this carbon datings were found that at that period.
Okay, 1000 BC.
1000 to 800.
Around 1000. Normally 1000 BC to 500 BC.
Okay.
Thank you, Professor Chandana.
Yeah, thank you,
Actually, that village tanks based not based actually patas. The patas is a very is a natural water collecting places, and areas, low places that
You mean deep
ancient,
places, right? You
yeah,
mean
yeah,
deep
yeah,
places.
deep
Okay.
places, yeah.
Thank you very much.
Our ancestors made use that places for made village tanks.
Okay.
Thank
you
you.
very much for you sharing your knowledge with us, and also that there's Mr. Peri suggests again that why don't you put that 100 prioritized undergrad, masters, and PhDs to explore that what was happening in our country in regarding that especially not on the water heritage probably he's looking for, but the many things what was there in our historical time. Okay, if there are no more questions, that I'd like to wind up our Q&A session. Thank you
Professor
very much.
Banduni,
Yes.
Can I ask a question? Only one. I'm
Yeah,
Nilupur.
please. Yeah, please go ahead.
Dr. Dharmasena, it's a kind of a technical question. I wonder, you said that the main ancient tanks are almost, they are located on and around the 150-meter contour. How, does that mark that mid-basin, or does it have another significance in this?
Large reservoirs are there to collect water from small reservoirs. Whatever the excess water coming from small tanks will go to large reservoirs. So that's a strategy to minimize the flood, and also to maintain the water table during dry period. So why we wanted to have it is not known. Why it is 150 meter. I can't say. Only thing now, when we take these three phases in watersheds, this is just at the bottom of mid phase. At the bottom of mid phase. So they have followed the principles of watershed management. That is only what I know.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. So I'm going to wind up our Q&A session. I'll hand over the forum to Dr. Ms. Tilina Kumari Kandanmulle, who's the computer of our session. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Banduni Athapattu. Thank you, Madam, for your excellent moderation. And now, while we are coming to the end of this program, I'd like to invite Mr. Ajit Ethugala, Honorary Secretary of the Institution of Environmental Professionals Sri Lanka, a chartered environmental professional and environmental specialist at Strategic Cities Development. Over to you, Mr. Ethugala.
Yeah, thank you, Tilina, giving me this chance for thanking you all. And I would like to express my our sincere thanks to Dr. P.B. Dharmasena for giving us an excellent coverage to water heritage of Sri Lanka and enlightening us about how much developed we were in our history. Actually, it was full of knowledge and shared many thought-provoking positions to the over 350 audience today. And thank you, Dr. Dharmasena. I also wish to express our gratitude to Dr. Kamal Aksiri, former chair of the Water Forum of IESL, who initiated this idea to have this webinar with Dr. Dharmasena. And our appreciation also goes to Engineer KPIU Dharmapala, President IESL, Council and membership. Engineer Professor Mrs. Niranjani Ratnayaka, President IEPSL, Council and the membership. Professor Ranjit Senaratna, Chairman, NSF, and the staff, including Mr. Shantasri, Head International Division of NSF, and Dr. Iresha Attanayaka, President of the Section C Sri Lanka Association for Advancement of Science and the membership. Engineer Badra Kamaladasa, Chair of the Water Forum, IESL, for their continuous help to organize this event and the participation. I would like to express my special thanks to Professor Banduni Athapattu, who is active member of these three organizations, IESL, IEPSL, as well as the SLAS, for organizing this event, and Ms. Tilina Kandamulla for comparing today's event. Last but not least, we would like to express our sincere thanks to Mr. Chamila Priyantha, Publicity Manager of IESL, for hosting the event with live streaming, and Mr. Nuwan Liyanage, Founder, History YouTube LK, and Net FM for media coverage as our media partners. Thank you very much, you all, and stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Athugala. Now we reach the end of this program, and thank you all for your undivided and continuous attention. As an ending note, I would like to make the presentation recording will be available at the official YouTube channel of the IESL, as well as that of the NSF. Thank you.